Namaste and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're looking at something pretty crucial for anyone hoping to join the Indian Armed Forces. We're talking about the SSB screening test, that very first hurdle you got to clear.
Absolutely. You guys send us some really interesting material on this first stage, and well, today we're going to unpack it all for you. We want to make sure you understand exactly what the screening test is about, and more importantly, give you some solid strategies to help you ace it.
Exactly. Because this initial screening is a make-or-break situation. Almost 60% of candidates are eliminated at this stage, so knowing the ins and outs is really, really important.
That's right. And the screening test, it's got two main parts that we're going to be looking at in detail today.
Yeah.
The Officer Intelligence Rating Test, or OIR, and the Picture Perception and Discussion Test, or PPT. This will give you a good idea of what you're up against.
Okay, so the SSB screening test, when does this happen during the selection process?
So this test, it happens on day one of the entire Services Selection Board interview process. It's the very first thing you'll face.
And what's the main reason behind this initial screening? Why is it even there?
Well, the main goal is pretty straightforward. It's to filter out candidates who don't meet the basic standards required for officers in the armed forces. It's like making sure that the people who go on to the further detailed tests, they actually have the basic potential and, suitability.
That makes sense. So if I'm getting this right, this day one screening is basically about these two main assessments.
You got it. As we mentioned earlier, they are the Officer Intelligence Rating Test, which we call the OIR, and the Picture Perception and Discussion Test, which is the PPDT. These two, they're designed to assess different aspects of a candidate's potential. They're looking for different things.
Okay, so let's break down the first one, the Officer Intelligence Rating Test, the OIR. What exactly is it, and how can our listeners sharpen their minds to do well on it?
So the OIR test, it's basically a multiple-choice question paper, usually divided into two sections. One section focuses on verbal reasoning abilities, and the other on nonverbal reasoning skills. The key here is speed and accuracy. You need to think fast and get the right answers, all within a time limit. It can be pretty intense.
Got it. So what kind of questions are there in the verbal reasoning part? Can you give us some examples?
Sure. In verbal reasoning, you'll often see questions on coding decoding, where you need to figure out the patterns and how words or letters are represented. Then there's sentence completion, where you have to fill in missing words logically. There's also logical sequences, where you got to find the next element in a series, and questions about antonyms and synonyms to test your vocabulary. It's all about checking if you can understand and play with language in a logical way.
I see. And what about the nonverbal part? What should our listeners be prepared for in that area?
In nonverbal reasoning, it's all about visual patterns and your ability to think about space. Common questions include things like pattern recognition, where you need to figure out the rule behind a visual sequence. You might also see questions on mirror images, where you have to find the reflection of a shape, embedded figures, where you need to find a hidden shape within a larger image, and odd one-out questions where you have to spot the visual element that doesn't fit the pattern. It's about seeing and understanding visual information and how things are arranged in space.
Sounds like a real mental workout. So what are some practical tips our listeners can use to excel in the OIR? What can they start doing right now?
Well, there are a few things that can really help you improve. Firstly, you need to practice every day. There's no shortcut to that. Work through reasoning books and try the online tests that are out there. This will not only get you familiar with the types of questions, but also help you get better at solving problems. And secondly, focus on getting faster and more accurate. Practice with a timer. It makes a huge difference. You have to get used to working under pressure. Train your mind to think clearly and quickly within a time limit.
That makes a lot of sense. Time management is so important in these tests. Anything else that could be helpful?
Oh yeah, for sure. Another really useful trick is learning to quickly eliminate wrong answers. You can often spot choices that are clearly incorrect, and that automatically improves your chances of picking the right one. And don't underestimate the importance of practicing with past OIR questions if you can find them. This will give you a good idea of how difficult the test is and the specific types of questions they usually ask. And finally, this may seem obvious, but it's super important. Stay calm and focused during the actual test. Don't let anxiety mess up your performance. Just take some deep breaths and trust in your preparation. You got this.
Some really solid advice. Okay, so let's move on to the second part of the screening process, the Picture Perception and Discussion Test, or PPT. It sounds like this one tests more than just reasoning skills.
You're absolutely right. The PPT is different, but equally important. It checks your ability to understand a situation, create a story based on what you see, and then explain and discuss it with others in a group. So it has 3 distinct stages.
Okay, let's go through these 3 stages one by one. Starting with picture perception. What exactly happens in this first part?
So in picture perception, they'll show you a blurry picture for a very short time, maybe 30 seconds or so. Then they take the picture away, and you have to remember and write down a few things. How many people you saw in the picture, their mood, like if they looked happy, sad, or neutral, and the general context or setting of the picture. This is the base for the next stages.
30 seconds seems like a really short time to see everything. What's the point of showing a blurry picture anyway?
You know, the blurriness is deliberate. They want to see how different people interpret and imagine things. It's about testing your ability to observe details, even when they're not clear, and to come up with your own understanding of the situation. It's about how you fill in the gaps and make sense of something that's not completely clear.
Interesting. Okay, so after we've seen the picture and made our notes, what happens next?
Next comes story writing. You'll have about 4 minutes to write a short story based on the blurry picture you saw and what you noted down.
4 minutes to write a whole story. So in this case, what makes a good story for the PPDT?
A good story for the PPT is usually one that's positive and hopeful in its message. The plot makes sense and it shows some leadership qualities even if they're not directly stated. It should have a clear beginning that sets the scene, a middle part where things happen, and a resolution or a possible good outcome. They're checking if you can create a logical and positive story from a picture that's not so clear, showing your imagination and how you solve problems.
Right, so it's not just about describing what you thought you saw, but creating a meaningful story around it. Then what happens after everyone's done writing their stories?
The last part of the PPT is the group discussion, or GD. This is where everyone interacts. Everyone gets a chance to tell their story to the group.
So everyone shares their own interpretation.
Exactly. And once everyone has told their story, the group has a discussion. The main goal is to come up with one common story that everyone agrees on, a story that combines everyone's ideas.
A group story. That sounds like it could get pretty interesting. Do you have any tips on how to handle this group discussion? What's the best way to approach it?
Absolutely. During the discussion, it's important to be clear and confident when you're explaining your own story and when you're talking in general. But don't try to take over the whole conversation. They're looking for people who can contribute good ideas and also work well in a team. So try to get everyone involved. Listen to what others have to say and build on their ideas in a positive way. Being able to get everyone to agree and guiding the group towards a common understanding, that's very valuable. It's about contributing without dominating the conversation.
So it's about finding that balance between speaking up for yourself and working together as a team. That's a really good point. Now let's switch gears a bit. We want to help our listeners improve their communication skills, and having a good vocabulary is a big part of that.
Yes, definitely. Clear communication is so important not only for the PPD, but for everything you do, especially in the armed forces. So we thought it would be helpful to share some English vocabulary words that are really useful for clear communication and understanding.
Great, let's hear them.
All right, the first word is articulate, which means to express yourself clearly and effectively. So you know being articulate helps you get your point across.
What's the next word?
It's cognizant, which means to be aware or knowledgeable of something, to be cognizant of the situation.
And the third word?
Exemplary. It means serving as a perfect example, like an exemplary performance.
Okay, what's next?
The next word is lucid, which means clear and easy to understand. A lucid explanation.
What about number 5?
Number 5 is profound, meaning something that has a deep meaning or significance, a profound thought.
Okay, we're halfway there. What's the next one?
It's resonate, which means to create a strong feeling of connection or agreement, like an idea that resonates with you.
What about number 7?
Number 7 is astute, which means having or showing